That when it comes to something like the borders discussion, you're dealing with justice and mercy. You cannot only be driven by one of those virtues.
That's right.
Mercy itself will lead you to hell.
Yep.
There's a brilliant Kurdish demographer who's a Swedish citizen now, who cited this fact that it costs the same amount to bring one refugee and keep them in Sweden as it does to look after 100 refugees in Jordan, Turkey, or Lebanon. Okay. So the obvious thing from that is you say, look, it's madness then to be, for instance, bringing in thousands of refugees to Sweden. You could be looking after hundreds of thousands of people in the region. Why is that still a tainted argument? It's because people aren't sure you're not going to smuggle in racism with that. That's why.
Right.
I think, are you sure you're not just coming up with this demographer
Right.
stuff in order to...
It's like you're smuggling in Hitler, like the religious type smuggle in Jesus.
You're going to start with NGO figures, and before we know it, it's Auschwitz. That's what they think.
Right.
But here's the thing. The shortcut solution to answering almost every single one of these problems is assume that your interlocutor has good motives. Yeah. Assume that they are being honest in the way that they're looking at it. And that's why I say...
have a comment about that. Okay, so this is something I deal with in my clinical practice all the time. Okay, so imagine that you're naive. And then what you are when you're naive is someone who thinks you trust people, because you think everybody has good motivations, which is some sense what Douglas is recommending. And they say, well, that's just naive. It's like, just wait a second, though. Because here's the developmental pathway. First, you're naive and you trust everyone. And then someone cuts you off at the knees. Or multiple people do. Or maybe you cut yourself off at the knees because you trusted yourself too much and you didn't take into account the malevolence that lurks in your heart and the hearts of others. And so that you get traumatized by betrayal. And then you become cynical. And you think, Jesus, I'm a lot smarter now that I'm cynical. And you are, because cynical is actually a move up on naive. But it's not the last move. The last move is to transcend cynicism and to say that even though I know that there are just as many snakes in your heart as there are in my heart, I'm going to hold out my hand in trust, because that's the best way to elevate both of us. And that is the prerequisite for a sensible discussion.
Yeah. And to concede that, this is why I'm always going on about Aristotle on this, to concede that it's not between good and evil, but between competing virtues. That when it comes to something like the borders discussion, you're dealing with justice and mercy. You cannot only be driven by one of those virtues.
That's right.
Mercy itself will lead you to hell.
Yep.
Justice on its own, blind, unseeing, can lead you to hell.
Yes, exactly. Well, and